No, it's great to be in the Carnage house. I love a bit of carnage.
Now, one thing I did want to ask you is I remember a little while ago, I just saw it come up on my Facebook feed. You started getting in a little bit of hot water about some comments about potentially traditional gender roles and things like that. I mean, I think it's pretty interesting in terms of like you are someone who has spent a long time as like a cop, which is arguably a very masculine profession.
I'm a walking contradiction.
Yeah, maybe you are. But do you think? I guess my final kind of question before I get to some fan questions and then beta mail of the week is like, it's one thing I haven't made up my mind on. In that when I look at kind of gender roles, like I think it's very difficult to say that one person should be doing this, one other gender should be doing this, because at the end of the day, you're kind of all your own person. And I'm kind of like from Penthouse, I believe, do what you want, don't care about social, what do you call it, social conditioning or whatever. But at the same time, I also think there's like usually like potentially a masculine energy, like a feminine energy, some things that they're usually both better at, though maybe not all the time. So like, I'm kind of open to the idea, although I'm not sure. But what do you think about finally just the hot question of kind of gender roles and how Christianity plays into that?
Do I come across masculine? Do I give that vibe?
No, you don't. Well, to be fair, she probably could beat me up.
I could with two fingers. But yeah, it's a good question, and I'm more than happy to answer it. I had a career, a very successful career. I was in a male-dominant industry, and I did well for myself. I didn't let people down, and people could rely on me. However, the problem that I think with the gender roles is there's not an equal standard. And this is the problem that I have. I don't care what women do and what men do, but there should be a standard that you have to meet, and whoever gets there can win. And sure, there will be some women that can get there and some men that can't. And then that woman should get it. It should be the best person for the job. And when I joined the police, I had a different physical standard of entry to men. And not many people might know this, but I was allowed, as a woman, I didn't because I was stubborn and I was actually fit back then, but I could, if I wanted to get into the police, do push-ups on my knees, whereas the men had to do it on their feet. See, that to me is complete and utter crap and nonsense. That's what I don't like. And unfortunately for women, like, we are built differently to men. But if there are women out there who are built sufficiently to men and can match men, then I have absolutely no issue with what women do with their life and with their career. I think when women make a decision to become a wife and a mother, I think that their career should never overtake that. I think that women, if they want to be a mum, you should be a mum, and your career should never come at the cost of your child. If you can have the best of both worlds, which I very much doubt, then I have absolutely no issue with women who work. But I think it's when women choose to be selfish and, be a mum, and then basically pop the kid out, shove it in daycare, from 6 till 6 a day, and then they work on their career. That's where the gender role thing, I have an issue, because I think that, it's almost the way that modern feminism has sort of made this topic. It's like a lesser thing to be a mum than to have a career. And I think that's really backwards. I think that being a mum is the best job that a woman can ever have. If some women don't want to, I couldn't care less. Do what you want. But if you make a choice to be a mum, that's when I think if you can have a career and be a mum, no problem. But it's when women have the me time and I got to work on my career, so I'm going to shove my kid in daycare and have it indoctrinated, or that's where I have issue. But again, if there is an even playing field and there is one standard and women can get there, go for it. I got there, so I have no issue with it. But I don't know if I dribbled on too much then. If you have anything you want to clarify.
No, I think that's very good. We're actually famous on this show for dribbling, and you certainly did not dribble. Well, thank you very much. We got one more segment, just a couple of fan questions before we wrap this up and do Beta Mail of the Week, which is only available on Patreon. Okay, so firstly, it's kind of, we almost got into it, but I had try my best to avoid it. So my buddy Lachlan McDonald, he says, given the controversial debate of policing in Australian society during the COVID era and the associated lockdowns that have occurred, do you support the strict policing measures in some states? Or if you don't, how can you justify letting the virus run around like it did in the UK or the US or wherever?
Yeah, so I am very much against all of the arbitrary restrictions, but I very much try to approach this with a little bit of understanding because, as I said, I have this camaraderie, this morale, and I understand the recruitment process. Cops are joined and basically trained to think a certain way, and the way that cops are trained is to basically do what they're told. So I don't necessarily think it's the individual officer's fault in all cases. I have seen videos where I'm like, that bloke or that chick right there should be sacked, and I'm more than happy to call out the bad apples when I see them. But I think a lot of the problems that are faced with the police, especially that we've seen during COVID, is just a consequence of the recruitment process and the training of the police. We're not independent thinkers like we should be. We've lost the ability to harness our right as a police officer to use discretion. And that's something that I think, again, could be fixed if you kill the weed at the root. I think if we just go after, and say all cops right now during COVID are really bad, that's almost just like ripping the weed out without the root. It's just going to keep growing back in the same issues. I like to focus on what could actually stop these particular things, because right now there is such a gap between police and civilian, and it's really dangerous because I say this, if you want to make enemies with police, you better start making friends with criminals, because that's what you're going to be left with. And at the same time, police need to have the trust of the people. That's their job, to protect the people. And I'm more of a belief that the government should be, and that includes the branch of the police, should be there to protect our freedoms and rights, not hinder them. And the only way that police should hinder freedoms and rights is when people have broken the law and then they've lost that right. And that's why they get locked up. It's tricky topic for me because I guess I have more of an insight and understanding of the brain of a police officer. I thankfully became a detective pretty early on, and I worked with some amazing people where we were independent thinkers. But the cops that are just kind of coming through the academy really quickly and then just getting thrown into these busy metropolitan areas on the beat, and they've got cops that are like only 1 or 2 years senior to them, training them. It's just this really bad habit and culture that the police are breeding, but very much I'm against the arbitrary restrictions. They're actually, I don't know, I'll send you the link later and you can maybe put it up, but there are actually like a group of police in New South Wales who have actually suing the government for making them enforce these arbitrary restrictions.
Really?
So yeah, there were some New South Wales police, there are 2 or 3 officers who actually wrote an official letter to the Supreme Court, and they've actually employed these lawyers, and they're doing like a full Royal Commission type suing of the Australian government for imposing the police on having to enforce these stupid COVID restrictions. And I think we should take our hat off to that, because these particular police, I actually tried to call them and I wasn't allowed to speak to them because of how serious it is. I don't know whether they've been punished or whether they're, being branded as something, but I think it's really encouraging to see that there are some really decent cops who are actually really against it, so much to the point where they've started a petition and they're getting other cops to sign it, and all these police are actually taking it to the court so that they don't have to enforce these things anymore.
100%. Well, that's a very comprehensive answer, Lockie. You better be very happy with that.